Right, everybody, thanks so much for listening. Returning guest. She's been on twice. I do hope people go back and watch our previous interviews with Jennifer Say, a former world class, she still is world class, but former world class gymnast for Team USA. She is fighting the woke mob. She is a former Elizabeth Warren supporter, like I was a former Bernie supporter before we both woke up. You can follow Jennifer at Jennifer SEY on Twitter. The books are Levi's Unbuttoned. The woke mob took my job and gave me my voice and chalked up my life in elite gymnastics. New company. We're going to be speaking about that in just a moment. It is xx-xyathletics.com. We do hope you go there, buy some merchandise, and then her Substack, definitely subscribe to that as well. It's SEY Everything. Check her out. Jennifer, that was a lot to say, but I'm happy we got through all of it. And it's always a pleasure to see your face and do another interview with you.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for having me again.
So let's kick this around because does it ever feel surreal for you, with your journey the past 4 years? Because, like you, I was a big Bernie person, voted Democrat my whole life. And then obviously, due to the jab injury that I received in 2021, it really woke me up to the medical freedom movement, also with the political movements and the gobbledygook that's been going on with the Democratic Party, specifically in the past 4 years. But does it seem surreal to you with that long journey you've taken?
I'll tell you, it felt surreal, Rob. I was invited to the White House for the signing of the executive order to protect women's sports. So I was there Wednesday. So that's just 2 days ago. I
Wow.
was invited Tuesday, got on a plane, got there Wednesday, was standing literally right behind the president. Like when he finished thanking the people he had to thank, he handed me the papers. He said, "Can someone
Wow.
hold this?" And that feels surreal because I think about my life in the last 5 years. It's been really tough. I don't always share publicly how hard it's been, but I kind of lost everything, at least my life as I knew it in it started in 2020 because I pushed back on lockdowns and COVID, and that's when I, left the Democrats. And I don't know, it felt like there weren't any opportunities for me in 2022 after I resigned from Levi's. I interviewed and I was definitely not allowed back in corporate America. They kept asking me if I would apologize for everything I'd done. They just held all the cards. They wielded their power in such a cruel, mean way if you just question. And it just felt, I had some pretty low moments, but I decided to start this brand that you mentioned. And it's hard. A startup is hard. But it has, and we took off like a rocket, and there's been tough times in between. That's normal. But the last 2 weeks have been just like insane. Um, and standing there behind the president, yeah, it just felt kind of crazy to have gone from being basically banished from polite society to being welcomed in the White House and getting a slot right behind the president to legislate something or to executive order something that is so common sense. I mean, the Democrats have made it easy for the Republicans to avail themselves of power at this point because they're just so stupid. They've
Yeah.
just done the dumbest things. Like you can't spend 10 years saying men are women and think that people aren't going to reject it. Something like I think only 30% of Americans approve of the Democrats right now. It's like,
Yeah.
no
That's
shit.
true.
You can't say such stupid stuff all day long and think people aren't going to peel off one by one. So it feels surreal in a sense, but I will say, sorry, this is a longer answer. I just kept my eyes, on the road and one foot in front of the other. And I tried to lean in to do the things that I know that I'm good at and to
Mhm.
follow my kind of principles. And I think if you do that, you can have hard times, but I think it will pay back in
Do
the
you
end.
ever look back? Because I see this in my own self, and this again happened with the injury to the jab for me, is that I look back and see the people that I used to be friends with, the way I used to vote, the way I used to act, things I believed in, climate control, the trans thing was, whatever. I didn't really care. Now I think it's a big issue, and we'll talk about that as we continue on into the interview. But it's very different. And I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? I was obviously brainwashed in college. I'm sure
Yeah.
you were a little as well, and also in the corporate realm in general, too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my view is let's see, how do I put this? What I believed the Democrats stood for, and you could argue I was brainwashed, but I stand by believing in these things. Like whether or not they stood for them, whether or not they were liars and hypocrites, like, yes, they probably were. But I believed in free speech. The Democrats were the party that believed in free speech. Let's be honest, the right was much more censorship driven in the
Right.
80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s. And you had the Christian right wanting to ban everything and music. And so I believed in free speech. The Democrats ACLU defended the Nazis' right to march in Skokie. Like that's the famous case. And I don't like Nazis. I'm a Jew, even though I get called a Nazi now all the time. But I do defend anyone's right to free speech. That includes very ugly speech that we hate, because otherwise somebody's deciding what speech is appropriate. So, what I believed is the Democrats stood for free speech. They stood up for the little guy. They stood against corporate interests, greedy corporate interests. They stood for women, for vulnerable children. They were against war. I mean, you can laugh now because all those things are so ridiculous. Like the Democrats are the neocons. The Democrats are the war party. The Democrats have waged a war on women. The Democrats have censored us for the last, I don't even know how long, at least 5 years. And so I can't in good conscience be part of that party anymore, but I still believe in those things. That's why I can't be part of the party. So I mean, there's the famous meme. I think Colin Wright did it. Like, I didn't leave the Democrats; they left
They
me.
left me.
I'm exactly the same. Men are not women, and if you allow one man to breach the private spaces of women or steal their opportunities, then you aren't for women.
Right.
It's sort of that simple. So it is all surreal, but they just lost their minds.
I want to go a little deeper into that because I remember back in Florida, I first was able to vote back in 2008. It was my first election. I did vote in the primary for the whack job Hillary Clinton. I mean, that's a whole nother story for another
Okay.
day.
You and I both did.
Yeah, and then I voted for Barack Hussein Obama secondly in the obviously against John McCain. But there was also an issue on the ballot. It was for gay marriage to be legalized in the state of Florida. Obviously, it didn't pass at that time. We go to 2012. The Supreme Court did push for gay marriage. It did go through. Anybody can get married that wants to get married now. That's totally fine with me. Do you believe though that was the slippery slope where we started to go from that all the way to this trans craziness where we have men walking around with all kinds of weird stuff, and obviously the Riley Gaines case and Paula Scanlon. The list goes on and on of all these women that have had to deal with men that it's almost like I don't know if they get off to being pretending like they're a woman. Maybe that's the thing, or maybe they just want to see the woman naked, or I don't know what it is, but when did this trans craziness start? Because I remember going to Catholic school. And when I was a kid, we had a couple of gay kids. There was no problems. No one gave a shit. But now it's out of control. Go ahead. Sorry.
My cat is going to try to go away.
It's okay.
You know what? I don't know. And I know there are a lot of people that are on sort of my side of this issue, which is the side of common sense and, no men in women's sports and men can't be women, that think that. And they are more of the kind of traditional Christian conservative ilk. And I'm not there. My director is a Christian. He's amazing. We joke all the time. He's like, "You're still gonna become one." Like, no, I'm not. So I don't know. I mean, I still support gay marriage. I marched for gay marriage. I have a lot of gay friends. I'm from the fashion industry in San Francisco. They're not hurting anybody. I find that to be a stabilizing force in the world.
Well, they have the gays against groomers, and they're totally against all this BS.
Right. It's a really different. So you can make the slippery slope argument that sort of normalized something that isn't quote unquote normal, whatever that means.
Sure.
I don't agree with that. Gay marriage was about gay people just wanting the same rights as everybody else, not more, which is what the trans people are asking for. They just wanted the same. And by the way, that is a stabilizing force in the world. You have same-sex couples that settle down and they, buy a home and they're good members of the community and all of these things. What the trans community, if that is even a thing that exists, wants is to demand that you and I spread lies and say they are women when they aren't and allow them into our spaces to pretend that they have no biological advantage in sports. Like, no, to demand from me that I recite their pronouns. Like, I think about this all the time. Like, when I was young, I'm older than you. I was like, counterculture. It probably best qualify as goth, but that was a way for me to signal, like, I dressed a certain way. I didn't make anyone else do anything.
Right.
I just wanted to signal that I wasn't a conformist. You could argue I was, but that's what I was signaling, that I was sort of setting myself apart. I wasn't insisting anybody call me a specific name or allow me into places I didn't get to go. Like it was just me. And so that's the difference, is it's like they're actually insisting on stealing rights from women.
But where did all the feminists go? Whether they were male feminists or female feminists, it's like they just disappeared off the face of the
I'm
earth.
going to stand up for my TERFs, my fellow TERFs. You've heard of the word TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist. It's considered a slur by the trans community. I wear it as a badge of honor. In all fairness, there is a community of TERFs, and I feel welcomed by them and part of that community. And these are lefty feminists, and they have been speaking on this for longer than anybody else. And people like Kara Dansky, there are very famous ones, academics in the UK. Their issue has been women's private spaces, prisons, battered women's shelters. They've been speaking about this since Julie Bendel, since the 70s. And so they saw this coming. The mainstream feminists are ridiculous and have abandoned their, and they are the ones shouting trans women are women, and so you're a bad, horrible person, because in their minds feminism is welcoming men into our spaces to let them steal our rights. But I do want to just give a shout out, my friend Kara Dansky, she's a lawyer. She would be called herself a proud TERF. There's I was on a tour this past summer, Take Back Title IX tour sponsored by the Independent Women's Forum. And it was the broadest politically, ideologically diverse group of women I've ever been a part of. There were conservatives, there were far left TERFs, there was me, which is like unaffiliated, but we all agree on truth and common sense. So in fairness, we have to give some of the feminists their due, but I agree with you. The mainstream feminist movement they're pathetic losers, and they're spewing these lies that are fed to them by the far left wing of the party, and they can't think at all. I will say this, Rob, this time is the stupidest time, along with COVID. I count it all at the same time, that I can even imagine. Like, if they can get you to say that men are women, then we have completely lost our minds. And we are going to look back at this time as one of the stupidest times in history. We allowed young children to diagnose themselves and say they're the opposite sex, and we mutilated and sterilized them.
And the parents go along with it, and their child abusers, they should be locked up for that. And that's no BS. And then they're pushing it with all these celebrities. That these celebrities, and I can't think of the names off the top of my head, maybe you can, but some of them have like 2 or 3 kids that identify as trans. It's bullshit.
Well, it's so dumb. And that's what I was going to say. And I'll get to the celebrities in a second. We are not far away from the moment where everybody pretends they never supported this, because it's so dumb. It's so dumb. They're going to just start scrubbing their timelines and pretend they never supported it. Just like people sort of do with COVID, like, oh, I was always against it, but they didn't say anything. It came after those of us, you and me. This is so dumb. And you do have celebrities. I think Cynthia Nixon is the one you're probably quoting, because an older video of her is going around right now. It's actually a video from a few years ago. I think she was on Sex and the City, and she's talking about how she has 2 trans kids, and her, cousins are trans, and her best friend's kids are trans. It's like,
they're proud of it.
It's so dumb, though. It's like the most obvious social contagion imaginable. Now, here's the challenging thing, because a lot of people are going to pretend they never associated with it. They never believed it, because you'd have to be a moron to believe in it. right? But what are the parents going to do who went along, who did actually sterilize and mutilate
Yeah.
their kids? Can you
It's
imagine the
child
guilt?
abuse.
Can
Yeah.
you, but can you,
Well,
so
it's the same thing. And just to interject quickly, and then I'll let you keep going, Jennifer. It's the same thing with the people that they gave their kids the childhood vaccines, and then the kid. I got to be careful how I say this. And then the kid ends up having autism, and they're wondering, did I do this? Did I not? And I'm
but they
saying this very generally.
But you know, with the trans stuff, I think, and I have a few former friends, not anymore, who have kids that transitioned. I mean, you can't actually change your sex, so I put that in quotes. What are they going to do when their child decides to detransition? Like they need an off ramp because they'll never accept that they ruined their child.
Well, those kids are on pills for the rest of their life, correct? And then all the scarring, whether it's a woman that's getting her breasts cut off or a guy that's having
Don't.
his thing cut off. I mean, that's really
I
disgusting to
mean, can
me.
you imagine as a parent? Can you imagine the guilt? Like you would do
Yeah.
anything to avoid feeling accountable for that.
I'm just saying there's a lot of whacked out people around the country. So again, there's people that get off to this. They're, these celebrities probably really don't give a crap about. And again, I think it is a form of child abuse. I also think a lot of these kids go through these issues through because they have mental health issues.
They
Maybe they're
totally.
getting abused at home, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever it may be. It could be at school as well. But these are the issues. They should be talking to a counselor. They should be talking to a therapist, not to, cutting
But
up
the
their bodies.
yeah, but the therapists, the medical community is
Yeah, they're
completely
pushing that crap
broken and
too.
deranged because they don't investigate, is this child being abused? Is this child depressed? Does this child have a history of mental illness? Does this child have other comorbidities? Are they autistic? Are they whatever? I mean, there was a huge spike during COVID when you had so much depression among young people because they were
Yeah, they're
isolated
locked down.
online. I mean, clearly there's other shit going on here. And the medical community, no wonder no one has any faith or trust in public health. Like they've spewed this garbage. I mean, I sort of feel for the parents. The medical community uses these lines like, your child will kill themselves if you don't let them transition and put them on drugs for the rest of their lives. So, the medical community needs to be held
Well,
accountable.
big pharma, it's the same thing with the jabs. They're making money off the jabs. They're making money off these kids changing their sexes, supposedly. And
Yeah.
it's all about getting you on pills for the rest of your life, making you sick the rest of your life. It's all a game. And unfortunately, a lot of people haven't seen the scam yet. You and I have, a lot of our friends have, but a lot of people haven't. They're still in this, I call it the liberal hysteria. They're in this trance that they haven't escaped yet.
It's true, but more and more are peeling away. If you have 30% approval of the Democratic Party, I mean, look at the election. It was, I don't even, I'm not going to say a landslide, but it was a clear,
Seven
uh,
swing states, popular vote, electoral
exactly.
college. I mean,
Exactly.
it's a
Every
landslide. Yeah.
single swing state, despite the Democrats' best efforts ahead of time to pretend that's not what was happening. So people are rejecting the Democrats in droves, and they don't seem to be taking the lesson. They're still standing by, supporting policies that less than 20% of the populace supports. They're still standing by quote unquote trans inclusion. They're still standing by their open borders immigration policy. They're standing by all these things, and they're just going to keep losing because people are seeing through it one by one. But I will tell you, because my family, they're all still Democrats. I still follow a lot of the
So
people that
mine.
used to be my friends that aren't anymore to see what they're saying. And every time I, am in my kind of media world, which is pretty diverse, but
Yeah.
I look over, I take a peek over to see what they're talking about because I think, well,
Right.
this will be the thing, common sense will strike. Absolutely not. They're just all in. Like they're just true believers and they're basically in a cult. I mean, one of the things that I just am sort of astonished by is how mad people are that Elon Musk is finding, the ridiculous fraud in the budget and saying we're not doing that. Like they're mad about it. Really?
Well, they were taught that the Orange Man is bad, back from 2015 and beyond. They just can't get past that. And again, it's people that are not opening up their minds. Even when I was a liberal, when I was a Bernie guy, I used to talk to conservative. We would
Yeah.
joke around, we'd fight. It was all fun and games, tit for tat. It wasn't a big deal. A lot of these people, it's a religion, it's a cult. They
That's right.
believe in the jab, they believe in the trans agenda. The list goes on and on. The immigration. Yeah, throw out the people that are criminals. And even the people that went over the border, they committed a crime. They want to go in the right way, that's fine. If it's a merit based, that's great too. Get the good people in that are working hard, that want to contribute to the society. We have enough people sucking off the dole right now. We don't need to bring more people in to do that.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me the things they're mad about. I mean, even watching, RFK go through the confirmation hearings, like I get it.
Everything was vaccine this, vaccine that. It
Like,
was a freaking joke.
why can't I question a medicine's effectiveness? Like it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It would be like saying you can never question, whether or not aspirin have side effects. And it's so dumb. Like it's just a medicine. It's not that doesn't work and has harmful side effects because everything does. Not to mention, the hammering of him about vaccines as if they're all the same. I mean, they're not all the same either. I mean, the COVID vaccine, for instance, you were injured, but it patently doesn't work really for anyone.
For no one. It doesn't help anyone. People, they said it was a 90% effective rate. Then it went 80, 70, 60, 30, 40. No one knows what the hell it is
more.
now. Just keep pumping it in you. And Pfizer's making, trillions of dollars. Moderna, all these companies, trillions, billions of dollars off getting the jab. Now they're trying to do a mosquito one about biting. This stuff is like science fiction. It's crazy what's going on in the country. Again, when I grew up in the 90s, 35 years old, I didn't know any of this stuff. I was naive, I was young, but it wasn't crazy like it is now. Between the social media, the medical industrial complex, it's crazy. This whole country is mad, and they just want to, I believe, make people sick. And that's the whole game. The trans game, the vaccine game, it's all to make people sick. It's not to help people. It's not to help you get ahead. The technology is to make you sick as well with the blue light. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's insanity.
Yeah, I mean, why are people mad that RFK wants to get toxins out of the food and the air? Like that's a
The
right.
liberals used to love RFK when he was environmentalist, when he was cleaning up the Hudson River back in 2004, when I was really young, reading an article in Rolling Stone where he said that George Bush cheated in Ohio against John Kerry in the presidential election. They loved him back then. But now it's against their agenda. They're getting all those big pharma dollars. Elizabeth Warren ranting and raving like a psychopath. Bernie Sanders talking about onesies. I mean, this is insanity.
So funny.
It's just a joke. So
yeah, when I worked at Levi's, which was for a long time, RFK came. It was when he still ran was it called the Water Keepers? Was that what the
yeah, right.
called?
Wow, you're good.
He came and spoke. It must have been like 2015. I met him. I mean, he was a hero because we sort of prided ourselves on clean production, and he was cleaning up the water. Like, can you imagine? No company would have him come speak now.
No.
Like he's just like, I mean, I think he's going to get confirmed, so that's something. But
thank God.
Yeah, it's just, it's crazy. Like he's dedicated, and I know he has some sort of colorful stuff in his past, but he has.
So does Donald Trump. So does every politician. If you went to Washington and opened up these people's closets and dug through them, you'd see some real scary, sketchy stuff going on.
I don't care. It's like he's dedicated his life to protecting children. And when it comes to environmentalism, I don't want to talk about climate. I would like to talk about clean air and water. I mean, I think we all deserve to have clean air and water, and he dedicated his life to that. I mean, if you read his books, they're so detailed. Like people say he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, I mean, he has a team of researchers. You can disagree, but take issue with the science by, speaking with science, not just calling him names. I mean, the Democrat Party, I guess what it comes down to is they claim to be the party of science and following the science, but they are the party of dogma, and they do anything to do with science. COVID wasn't science. Trans insanity is not science. Nothing they do is remotely related to science. And now they're in the position of looking like complete lunatics where they're defending toxins in our food. That they want the bad dyes and toxins in our food.
Well, they're
Just
getting money for Bill Gates, George Soros. These people are funded by the WEF, the World Health Organization. They're all in this big cabal, again, to make people sick. They don't care about you. All that jibber jabber about helping the working people, getting ahead was all a farce. I've saw through that. I'm thankful to God that I've saw through this because it was just a joke and I was extremely brainwashed. I want to leave you with this before we move on to another conversation. When I voted for Donald Trump, that was the first Republican I voted for. I did vote for Ron DeSantis in the primary because of his
Florida.
issue with the vaccine, and he's done some pretty good things in the state of Florida,
Yeah.
due to even what you're speaking about with the trans agenda. Regardless of that, voting for Donald Trump, who I was brainwashed to hate before this, I felt very strange doing it. But then again, it's like almost the devil and the angel, and they're fighting in your mind. I don't want people to think I'm a psycho talking like this, but I'm trying to make an analogy here. But, and it's like, I have to vote for this person because these other people are just so psychotic. They're so off the reservation in every, place. I can't do it anymore. But imagine, I felt very weird doing
Yeah.
this because
No,
of
I
the
know.
brainwashing.
No, I know. Well, my husband and I both voted for him as well, and we did not in 2020. And we even went so
No,
far as to place yard signs in our yard in our very deep blue city. And I didn't feel weird voting for him, but I felt weird having the sign out for sure.
yeah,
But whatever. At one point, this woman, our neighbor, came up to my husband and said, "Oh, I'm going to put mine out too." It's like you have to say what you think,
yeah, right.
those, if you had any sort of heretical positions that went against the Democratic Party, too many people were silent. And so that enabled the left to, you know, basically say anyone who voted for Donald Trump is fringe, any position that is not their position is fringe, because we were too quiet. I mean, some of us weren't during COVID. So if you say it, you realize not only is it equal, but we're the majority. And that's why, I wear that's why I started the brand. If we come back to that,
Yeah.
XXY Athletics, because I knew that we needed to influence the culture. Most people agree with us that men can't be women and women's sports should be protected, but most people have been too afraid to say it out loud. But if you make a cool brand and you have great ads and you have a t-shirt, people will wear it and it starts a conversation. And suddenly we're not pushed into the closet silent anymore. We're asserting ourselves as the majority. We had given up that position of cultural influence. The left is really good at it. The legislation that they passed, Biden on his first day, that prioritized gender identity, that was a long time coming. They'd already infiltrated the culture. It was present in brands and schools and drag queen story hours and all this shit. So the legislation was downstream from the culture. We have to take the culture back. So that's why I wanted to start the brand. And I think
Well,
it's
it's a drip, 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 like you said. And then it's ingrained into people's minds. And then it's easy to just push things through. And then people just
exactly.
say that's life in
Exactly.
America.
Exactly. And so we have to take the culture back. And that means, the stuff people consume, the brands and the movies and all of this. And, Ben Shapiro always says facts don't care about your feelings. They do care about your feelings. And we need to influence people's feelings and emotions through the culture, because if it gets to legislation, it's too late. The legislation passed because the people didn't resist because they'd already been brainwashed. So now we have the hard work of taking it back. But I think it's happening in real time right now.
So, what's been the response to the brand? Obviously, it's a fairly new brand, a few months in, as far as people, purchasing items, also in general, people on Twitter. I mean, you guys have made a great commercial. I know you're involved with it with a lot of the, Riley Gaines, Paula Scanlon, the whole list goes on and on. A lot of young girls are in the commercial talking
Yeah.
about sports in general. So that was great work. But what's the response been like besides the commercial?
Well, we're about 10 months old, so not even a year. We launched March of last year, and it definitely took off like a rocket because I think people were relieved to find a brand that aligned with common sense and their values. They didn't have an option before. It's a startup, so we've had tough days, it just happens. But the last 2 weeks or so have been insane, like nothing I could have predicted. And the ad we put out at this point, I think it's only a week ago, I think has over 15 million views already.
Wow.
JK Rowling
Wow. I
retweeted
saw
it
that.
the Monday after we launched it. And then it's just taken, I mean, I think her tweet alone has 7 million views. She has 14 million followers. So um, it's just been like a rocket. And now I think we're heading to the point where everybody's starting to pretend they never supported this madness. And that's good for my brand, certainly. And I think they respect the courage it took to be out there before everybody was saying it. So the response has been amazing. And I think, the thing I'm proud of is people really like the product too. It's very high quality. It's really well made. I mean, I'm not in this as a gimmick. I don't want to be in and out and just kind of, make money because there's this moment. Like I want to build a real brand that can compete with the big guys. And you can't do that if you don't make great product. So the reviews are 4.9 stars out of 5. Just like people love the product. The repeat customers are really high because they get the product and they sort of buy it to support us. And then they're like, oh, this is actually good. Why would I buy Lulu or Nike anymore?
Yeah.
So the response has been amazing. Yeah, we just are going to keep going.
What about sneakers eventually? Because is that something where you're going to dabble into? Because obviously people think of Nike and the
Yeah,
sweatshops. We're trying to stay away from that kind of company in general. Are you looking at that direction?
that's a great question. I right now know it's a very technical product. I'm not ruling it out as never, but there's
Okay,
very successful apparel, Lululemon being an example. They do a little bit of shoes, but not really. So we're
true.
focused on clothing right now. That's what I know how to do. It doesn't mean I'll never consider shoes, but right now, that's not the game we're in.
Lululemon is mostly women, I would say, than men. But
They have a
and
pretty good men's business, and it's more of
oh, okay,
a fitness brand than a
yeah,
sports and athlete brand. Like we're for athletes, competitive athletes, and that's what the ad highlights. Real girls rock. I'm wearing the t-shirt now. Is the discipline, dedication, hard work of competitive athletes. That's what the ad is really about. And now on top of that, if you're a female athlete and you dare to stand up for the protection of women's sports, on top of all that punishing hard work, you have to deal with harassment and threats. That
yeah.
was really the idea behind the ad.
What are you guys? I mean, I know you sell the shirts, all kinds of different shirts, hats. What's like the hot selling item that you would tell people listening to this to look into or to get?
Yeah. Well, our t-shirts have been like we can't keep them in stock. So the logo tee, which I'm not wearing now, but has our logo on it, that's sort of become this like symbol of common sense. It's black tee with our green logo. But I would just encourage people to check out the actual workout wear and performance gear. I mean, we make amazing leggings and moisture wicking tops, dry fit, all of that for both men and women. Um, and that stuff's really starting to go as well. But I think in the initial days, people just wanted to make their views clear. So they bought the hat or the t-shirt, but they're coming back and they're checking out the performance wear because why would you, again, support a brand like Nike when you could find a common sense brand that aligns with your values that's just as good?
Jennifer, is it 50-50 on like men and women sales, or is it more women than men? What is it?
For women, and that was by design. It's about 80
Okay.
20.
Wow, that's really drastic. Okay. Well, we hope
Yeah,
that men do support and buy because it does look good if men are supporting as well.
too. We
You
just
know,
sort of in the early days, you kind of have to pick a focus, and so we focused on women. I think over time we'll grow the men's collection. Men are really leaning in right now. The sales to men in the last month have been
oh,
very strong, so we'll start to grow that collection too.
and as far as the influences, I don't want to keep repeating the names, but we've repeated, the two women along with you, with Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon involved in this. Who else are you trying to get on board or
Yeah.
involved, whether it's professional, college? Because if you could get somebody that's a big name, professional or college person that's playing right now, I think of Caitlin Clark. That'll never happen because she seems like she's starting to go woke right now, but par for the course. But
Well,
anybody you see
he
coming
also
up?
has a many-year Nike contract for many, many millions of dollars.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
we can't afford her. But we've brought people on board. Basically, if you are a female athlete or coach that has spoken out against this stuff, we've brought you on board. Now, a lot of these people aren't well known. yet, other than Riley, but they will be. So we want them to grow with us. And so we have a NIL, name, image, and likeness program with
Oh,
college athletes who have spoken out. So one of the athletes in the ad that we made that you referred to is Sia Lee, who was the team captain for University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and they boycotted playing against San Jose State, which fielded a male on the
yeah.
team. And Sia is amazing. Her university told her, don't do this. You need to stand down. And she did it anyway. So she's a
Good for
bad,
her.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, what happened with her? Did she have any issues after that when they told her to stand down and she stood up
Did
instead?
it anyway. She just kept going. She's like, can you imagine at 21 having the strength of character to do that? Like these
Yeah.
people are amazing. So we're really proud. She's in the ad. Riley's little sister, Neely Gaines, who's a
Oh,
gymnast, is in the ad. And then we have another young woman. Her name is JC Bassett, and she is one of the top Taekwondo athletes in the world. She's a silver medalist at Worlds, and she's very young. She's 17. We wanted a range of sports and stuff. So we'll keep collecting ambassadors, and some of them you might not know now, but you're going to know them one day.
I want to kind of continue on and kind of, backpedal on, to President Trump and the EO. Obviously, you were there, it was a big deal. The EO is great, but
Yeah,
again, you bring in a new president that,
right.
could be a Democrat.
That's
We hope not, but it could happen. It could be your governor, Jared Paulus, or Josh Shapiro, who knows?
yeah,
Regardless of that, the
yeah.
EO can be wiped out very fast with the Democrat as president of the United States. A bill needs to be passed. There is a bill that passed the House. It is sitting and waiting in the Senate. It is not getting, taken up yet. So my
You're
question
right.
is, did you have any kind of talk with the president's people about, hey, the EO is great. It's nice. We can all clap
They
and sing
know.
and jump and dance, but it's not a law, which means, again, a Democrat could come in 4 years from now and just wipe everything clean.
Yeah, they know that we need legislation. They also know, and a lot of people don't understand this, that the executive order only impacts federally funded institutions. So that's K through 12
Oh,
schools and universities. Two times the number of athletes compete outside of that publicly funded system. I never competed in the publicly, I competed for a private club as a gymnast in the Olympic movement. Those athletes aren't impacted. The US Olympic Committee doesn't have a rule on the books. They allow males to compete in women's sports. So we need a law, yes. And we also need the culture to change. We need the vast majority of Americans that agree with us to push back and stand up. So not a single governing body would allow for this anymore. So we still have work to do, but it's still a huge win. And Trump has sort of knocked the door down, and we need to take it and run from here.
is there any talk about the Olympics with them coming to America in 2028, Los Angeles, and what's going to happen with this rule and that?
Yeah, he talked about it during the signing. He knows the signing doesn't impact that. The International Olympic Committee governs the Olympics, and that's obviously international, so outside of the scope of a president's EO. But because the Olympics is in Los Angeles, he talked about basically the ways that he would exert a ton of pressure on the IOC to make a rule that males can't, or basically not host, I think is what he's saying.
Yeah, no, it needs to happen. We need to get that law passed again. It's in the Senate. It's not that far away. Republicans have the majority. I'm sure that they could pick off a couple Democrats. I mean, I know it's hard.
Well, in Congress,
It's
they didn't. There were two Democrats in Congress. It went through Congress, and now I think it's in the Senate. And
right.
even Democrats that right after the election said, this is crazy and this is why we lost the election, Congressman Seth Moulton, he voted
Yeah.
against it because he's a coward.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a clown too. He ran for president back in 2020. He didn't last too long, but uh, regardless of that, let's kind of move toward the end of the interview. Again, Jennifer Say, I do hope people look into her clothing line. It is XX-XY Athletics. The Twitter is Jennifer Say. It is Say Everything on Substack. The books are Levi's Unbuttoned. The Woke Mob Took My Job and Gave Me My Voice, and also another book, Chalked Up My Life in Elite Gymnastics. Get all that stuff if you can. And we're going to just keep moving into Generation COVID. So you are putting out that documentary about COVID in general, what happened. I want you to talk to the audience a little bit about that because, we haven't really discussed that. A lot of your talks have been about, very important topic of the clothing line as well as what's going on with the transgender. But I do
Yeah.
want to drift back into this
Sure.
Generation COVID doc.
Sure. We started filming in 2022. We actually have it in my inbox to look at the final cut right now. Documentaries take time. I mean, we followed these kids for 2 years, so we were filming for quite a while because we wanted to see the impacts as they evolved over time. And we're a lean team with a small budget, so it's taken us some time to get to our final edit, but still working on it. It's definitely coming. You can check out the trailer on my Twitter. We also have our own website, generationcovidfilm.com. And now I need to sell it. So hopefully the streamers have gotten with the program as well and aren't afraid of this content, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's par for the course if that's going to happen. But if not, hopefully it'll get out there because I think it's important for people to, again, relive what happened. I know everyone wants to forget about what happened, but we
Forget.
need to learn from our mistakes. Otherwise, we repeat them again. That is the definition of insanity. We don't want to be insane. Unfortunately, there is a lot of insane people
Yeah.
around the country and around the world. I want to go into these last two audience questions.
Yeah.
Jordan Childs, an Olympian. There was a big issue with the medal back in the Summer Olympics. I know this is a little old, but we did get this as a question. What was your opinion on what went on with that medal issue?
I'm going to be really honest. I did not follow it very closely. So I don't feel equipped to make a statement.
Sure.
My understanding is her score was she was penalized for something that kind of knocked her off of the third place podium. I didn't see the routine. The judges are crooked, so I don't doubt that, it was a faulty assessment of her, deserved score. But I wasn't, I don't know why I couldn't, I just didn't watch. I did watch to some extent, and I was very thrilled with Simone's performance. And I'm a big Simone fan. I don't care about her politics. I think she is the GOAT. She is so much better than anybody else. And to see her make the comeback she made after everything she's been through, I was cheering like crazy. But I didn't pay too much attention to that. So I don't have a good comment there.
Just to follow up, as an Olympian, and just going back to the clothing line, and knowing a lot of whether they're women or still young girls, how come none of them have kind of approached you to be involved with the clothing line, again, young or old, because you were involved with USA Gymnastics for quite a long time.
Well, I was already ostracized by USA
Right.
Gymnastics and the gymnastics community for having called out the abuse back in 2008. It doesn't matter. You and I both learned this. If you're right, if you were out of line and you went too soon, you're hated still no matter what. That said, all the big athletes have huge contracts. I mean, I think Simone's contract with Athleta is like $60 million. So, we're a startup. We don't have that kind of money, but they're also woke. So they're not a single Olympian or high level professional athlete has spoken up on this matter. That's how far we have to go. Not one.
Yeah, it's terrible what's going on. And what's next for the brand? You just continue chugging, or
Yeah, we just keep going. We have pretty aggressive growth plans. We've seen a huge growth in sales in the last few weeks. We are chasing product, meaning just trying to get back into things that are sold out. So if you go to the site and you see something you like and it's gone, I'm sorry. We're working on getting more. Yeah, we're just going to keep
how
going.
many people are running the company with you?
Oh, it's like,
Two? It's just you and that other person?
no, it's like six.
Oh, wow, that's really small. Oh, all
Yeah.
right.
Well, we're going to have to probably add to that soon. But yeah, it's a very tight team. It's a startup, and I manage the budget with discipline, so I don't overhire. But it's hard to manage the growth right now. I'll say that. So we
How
need,
come you never haven't done a podcast? Obviously, Riley has her podcast. She's involved with Fox now, but you have a lot of name notoriety. I'm just surprised you haven't done any kind of podcast or anything like that.
I don't think the world needs another podcast. There's a lot of podcasts out there. I can't listen to all the ones I'd want to. I'm busy with the
Right.
brand, so I'll just not do one for now.
All right. And we'll end there. I do hope people go to Jennifer Say on Twitter. Go to the website. It's xx-xyathletics.com and definitely buy the books. Again, Levi's Unbutton the Woke Mob took my job and gave me my voice and chalked up my life in elite athletics. Definitely get those books as well. Substack is Say, S-E-Y, everything on Substack. Anything else you want people to know or do before we end the interview, Jennifer?
No, just give us a look-see at the website. I think you'll find something you like. There's a lot of great stuff there. And thanks to everyone for the support. People, the ad has been such a huge, it took off like crazy. And there was this little mini campaign online to try to do like a fundraise so we could run in the Super Bowl. And I'm like, I don't want to run in the Super Bowl. I already got 15 million views for free. Why would I spend $8 million? The best way to support us is just to buy something.
Right.
That's the best way.
Yeah, because it gets out there, people see it, they might like it, buy it. It's all about getting that person-to-person contact in general. But Jennifer Say, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you today.
Yeah, thank you.